Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our Read Ballarat event. Thanks for persisting with the tech issues. Not quite sure what was going on, but glad to see a few of you have been able to join the meeting. I would like to acknowledge the Wadawurrung people who are the traditional custodians of the lands that I'm on, and also acknowledge the traditional custodians of all the people across the lands where we're meeting, and pay respects to elders past and present, and pay respects to any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islanders here. Today, we're lucky enough to have Kylie Hoey come and speak to us about writing across the Victorian curriculum. It's a presentation that she did at Sharing Best Practice last year. I was unable to go and watch her presentation, so I'm glad to be able to hear it this time. So Kylie's a literacy leader and 1-2 teacher, is that right? At a school at the moment.
Yep.
And she also helps, works, well, what was previously known as OCA, which is now, as of yesterday, known as the Impact Teaching Group, around creating contact from her. She's passionate about improving reading and writing outcomes for primary school students, and believes this is best achieved by supporting teachers to develop strong content knowledge, and implement effective instructional routines. She's also a star at creating comedic illiteracy and education related content. So thanks, Kylie, and I'll hand it over
No
to
worries.
you.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for those that did manage to get on. Luckily, it's recorded, so the people that haven't got the new link will at least be able to watch it. So, luckily, I talk fast, so the 15 minutes or whatever that we've lost shouldn't matter too much. I'll just get started straight away and just talk a little bit about the documents that I'll end up getting to, how they were sort of born. So, yes, I'm starting with the meme. Basically, this was the problem in probably almost every school I've worked at, and it all comes from teacher education. There was just nothing on how students actually learn to read and how they learn to write. I know that was the same for me as well. So last year I was a literacy leader, and must have been the end of 2024 when I got to see the new curriculum 2.0, and I just thought, I don't know. I don't know how I'm going to bridge this gap with when there's a lack of knowledge with actually how students write, but also with the new curriculum as well. But this is basically what I was thinking. How do I bridge that gap? New curriculum, writing instruction, writing assessment, and teacher knowledge, which there were huge holes in because, as I just said, teachers weren't even taught at university. And, you know, with teaching with whole language or balanced literacy, it was very much that love of writing, just get them writing, get them writing. And that really left teachers with a real gaping hole in their actual knowledge when it came to instructing and then assessment. And we know instruction and assessment bounce off each other. And if you have holes in one, that would be enough to have some huge issues with the learning and teaching of writing. But when you've got gaps in both areas, you know your teachers are going to be struggling. This was my experience as well in schools from when I first started writing. It was like the first thing we did was sit down and go, oh, what are we doing? Is it persuasive, informative? What are we doing? Oh, why don't we go to the Melbourne Zoo and then they can write information reports on animals. And that was, I know I'm simplifying it, but that was basically writing. And then you might talk a bit about the structure, and kids were expected to write. So I was thinking about the writing rope. I don't know how familiar people are with the writing rope. I know probably more with the reading rope. But when I was thinking about the new curriculum, instruction, assessment, and trying to tie those together, the writing rope really stood out to me because it really does show the components, the complex components of learning to write and the skills it actually takes for a student to become a skilled writer. I'll unpack this a little bit more, but that's what the rope looks like for those that haven't seen it. This is a picture of what I had in the planning room last year at my school. And that was just up where teachers planned. So they could see it and I just tried to embed it wherever I could. I also made other documents that had pictures of this as well, just so teachers saw it a lot. I printed out the writing rope for teachers to take to parent-teacher interviews, so they could actually talk about the students' writing from that perspective. So I really did try to use this a lot to bridge the gaps. Even though yes, it's a rope, I prefer to think of it as a bit of a box set. Do they have the box set? So what I've got here is, just a little graphic of looking at it from, the context of having a box set of books. Syntax is the bookshelf. And I like to think of syntax is, if you can't actually construct a single sentence, then everything else falls apart. So it sort of holds the writing together. And then you've got your transcription skills, writing craft, text structure, syntax, held together with critical thinking. And I've just covered that up for me. This is a little quote here from the author of The Writing Rope. Improving students' writing quality requires more than simply having them write more. Explicit writing instruction is necessary and it benefits all students, even those whom learning to write seems to come effortlessly. It includes explicit instruction with guided practice for all the components of the writing rope. So when you think about instruction, you're looking at all the components of the writing rope, but when you're thinking about assessment, you're also thinking about all the components of the writing rope. So this is the writing rope just unpacked a little bit more. So those little headers are just unpacked more, where you've got that sentence structure where syntax was, grammar and punctuation on the bookshelf there, and sort of bookended with the revising and editing and the planning. I hope that makes sense. If you've got any questions during it, you can put it into the chat and I'm happy to answer them at the end or during it. I don't mind which one. So this is what I've experienced in schools. This is what the bookshelf often looks like. It's sitting on that bed of genre. That's what it is. And everything else, we'll cover a little bit of punctuation, give them some structure, the body of the text, and then the audience. And you know what, we'll throw some adjectives in, like let's have a week of focusing on those, and then kids write narratives. So minimal planning, and I would say sometimes none. The planning's not very thorough. And then on the other end, we've got the teacher doing most of the revising and editing. And some of my most stressful moments in a classroom has been when students are writing and they all want to see you at once, and you have to put names on the board, and they are just coming to you with so many issues, in their 4 pages of writing. You do not know where to start. You don't want to tell the child that they actually should start again because they've actually just spent the last 2 or 3 sessions writing 3 or 4 pages of something that really you don't even know where to start. Punctuation, structure, language, spelling, handwriting, like where do you actually start? And I was a senior teacher, grade 5 and 6 for a few years, and any senior teachers that might be watching, you'll know that, you really don't know where to start when you've got senior students. It's hard enough with juniors when they haven't explicitly been taught the components, but, that is a real tumbleweed by the time you get to grade 5 and 6. So this just shows, and I'm sorry if you've never seen the reading rope before, but this just shows a relationship between the reading rope and the writing rope, where you've got the word recognition for reading, you've got the transcription skills for writing, which is your spelling and your handwriting. So you can see how those two are one and the same. When they're writing and spelling, that word recognition, the phonics skills come into play. Vocabulary, writing craft, because word choice and things like that come under writing craft. The literacy knowledge with the text structure, the language structures with the syntax. And we know, you might have a student that can read a sentence, but can they understand it? Can they write one on their own? So they go hand in hand. And then you've got your background knowledge and your critical thinking. And you sort of think about that reading and writing, those skills, even though they're entirely different skills, they both play on each other in various ways. And this sort of shows what I was kind of talking about, I guess, that students, when they're reading, trying to interpret the writer's message. When they're writing for a reader. So it's that reciprocal sort of relationship there. And the Victorian curriculum, the new one, for anyone that's familiar with it, you will see that it has tried to do that. You won't really see the reading, writing. You'll see read and write, and everything's a lot more together, where, it's less separate, where this is the reading hour, that's the writing hour. So I think the curriculum does support where we're moving with our literacy blocks, where there isn't that reading and writing hour. And that might be all I say really positively about the curriculum, because I think there's a few other issues as well. This sums it up for me, because I still think it's very vague. I'll talk a little bit more about that later on, but it's still very vague. And I think teachers are just looking for, I'm a grade 2 teacher. What's their writing meant to look like? What are the skills? And it doesn't quite nail it down enough. So it does add a layer of complexity for teachers that are trying to navigate, upskilling themselves and also understanding the curriculum. It would be really nice if we had really specific and measurable skills. This is an example. So this is, I think I got from the grade 4 curriculum. So create narrative, informative and persuasive texts, written and spoken, using relevant linked ideas for a range of audiences and using multimodal elements as appropriate. I've underlined it there. That's all the parts of the writing rope that comes from. So you can see there's critical thinking, you've got text structure, you've got transcription skills. Like, you've got a lot of different skills in that one part. You've got syntax. So I've just used the red for the syntax. They also need syntax skills to do pretty much any of that. And then you've got the spelling and the handwriting skills that's going to underpin all that. So the amount of skills needed for that one part of the curriculum, it's pretty heavy. And then when you check out the elaborations, hoping for some sort of clarity, just got, well, here it says verb groups, noun groups, adverbs. It doesn't even say that at the top here. So it brings in new things and new parts of the writing rope as well when you go to elaborations hoping for something else. I think that could have been broken up. And look, this isn't a attack the curriculum meeting, by the way, but I am trying to highlight how difficult it is to try, and why I made these documents as well, because how difficult it really is to make sense, and especially if you're a graduate teacher, to make sense of curriculum documents at the same time when you're trying to, really improve your instruction. So this is another meme, obviously, because I have to throw them in, but you're not going to get, sometimes the elaborations aren't bad, but a lot of the time it can actually confuse teachers a little bit more. You probably need quite a few people at your school unpacking them together. So when I made this slide, I was thinking about reading comprehension and how we are increasingly understanding that reading comprehension is an outcome of all the other reading skills working together. And I was actually thinking about when, narratives and information reports and, all the different genres, that really, I think it's almost an outcome of everything else. A lot like that reading comprehension. It happens when they've got all the skills. That's when they can actually write a whole text. And I definitely know teachers have struggled with, students aren't writing enough, because they're used to children writing a lot regularly. And now we're moving to more that they are responding to text in class, responding to learning and knowledge in class. And we're really trying to nail down that sentence level writing before we move on. And I think it makes sense when you think about, for years, how many teachers, myself included, that have asked children to write, narratives when they struggle with spelling and they struggle with actually writing a sentence that makes sense. So we are on the right path, but it's really thinking about, to write that text, what do students actually need? And it is quite a lot. That's sort of where my idea come into it. And I was trying to think, like I'd said, to make it easier for teachers. So this is the Victorian Curriculum and the writing note. They got married. I wasn't at the ceremony, but I'm sure it was really beautiful. So I married the two, and I basically went through the curriculum and looked at the writing rope, and I started on the holidays. Must have been, I'm terrible with dates, but it must have been 2024, the end of year holidays, and I just kept doing them on the holidays until I think about mid-year last year they were done. And so this is the prep one. Now I'll just quickly explain the purpose of these. Number one was, for me, teacher knowledge. It was about teachers being able to have the curriculum in front of them for writing, but also understand what part of the writing rope they were looking at. So this is the prep. I'll go over it a little bit. I'm not going to read them all out or anything like that. But if you go to syntax, for example, so I've got a little column over here. Be able to moderate if you want to use them a few times in a row. But if you look at syntax, for example, uses capital letters to begin a sentence and full stop to end it. Writes a complete sentence containing a noun and a verb in correct word order. Beginning to experiment with using conjunctions and but when writing responses. These are all from the curriculum. I didn't make them up. They're from there. So I'm imagining when teachers are using this, and in fact, when I did this presentation, only teachers at my school then were using them. But now quite a few different teachers have used them at different schools, and I've had a bit of feedback since then. So the purpose of them seems to be working, where teachers are becoming aware of what they're looking at, what skills they're looking at when they're checking that writing. And I just read out the syntax, for example. So it just reinforces that I'm a prep teacher. These are the skills for syntax for my preps. I'm responsible for these components. I think it also stops teachers from maybe getting excited and thinking, oh, we could do this, we could add adverbs, that would be so fun. I think it really nails it down to, what are you most responsible for this year? Not that you can't challenge your students and do more, of course you can, but this is it. And if you're finding an area that you're not ticking off, so for example, I know being a junior teacher, transcription is very, very heavy. And if they're not getting some of that transcription stuff done early, then they're very likely to have some problems with writing. You can look at it with reading. We know if a child's not picking up their phonics skills, then they're probably going to have a lot of trouble with reading. And it's the same with writing. Those transcription skills are the foundation for all the other parts. So I'll just go through some of them, show you. So that's the prep one. The idea also is that if you use them in your setting, you could make this shorter. You could put some of them together. You may have your own skills that you need to put in there as well. You can adapt it to whatever you want. This isn't like this is the final copy. It's a base for you to work with. And hopefully you don't need to use it forever. That's the other thing. The more you use it, the more you actually know the curriculum and the writing rope. And I actually had a teacher probably about a month or so ago that was using them message me and actually said that now when they're going around and actually correcting the work in class, in their head, they're like, oh, that's transcription. Oh, that's syntax. Oh, that's the text structure. So just from using these, they know the curriculum more. They know what they're looking for in the writing when they're just looking at it every day in class. So they know what parts they're probably strong at and not so strong at by looking at their work every day because they've used this paperwork. Grade 1. So it's even interesting if I go back, you can sort of see how more comes into the writing craft, more comes into the text structure. There are links to all the documents on these slides. Then we've got Year 2. They do obviously get longer, and this is where if you're going to use these, I would start putting some together to make it a bit more of a one-pager. Like you can see there, the writes words of one or more syllables containing vowel digraphs and correctly spells less common long vowel spelling patterns. That's something you could probably put together quite easily and just make a comment next to it on what sort of spelling patterns you've seen. You can make these a lot shorter if you wanted to. Year 3, Year 4, Year 5, and 6. And you can see the transcription skills, like they're still there, and that's why handwriting is so important. It actually is in the curriculum all the way through. So it's not a junior skill. It's not, oh, you do handwriting F to 2. It's actually right through the curriculum. And you'll see with these documents, you'll actually see a lot of it move up. And what I did after I made those, oh, and I'm sorry, I thought I had this slide. That's just a picture of a teacher that was using them last year, and I just asked if I could take a photo just so you could sort of see what they were doing. And there's some little notes there you can see, and you can sort of see the nose as well. So anyway, that's just to look at. Cardboard is just so I could take the photo. I also had all the levels F to I think 6 or 7, and just had a writing sample that was annotated using this as well, just to show teachers, how to use them and examples of it. So I don't know how well you can make that out, but this is that document cut up, and it's labelled on this piece of writing, because that's the other issue which I did talk about, the teacher knowledge. So sometimes they might not actually realise what that skill looks like, and it's no wonder if they haven't actually been taught. This is the document. All the other documents you just saw, that's them here, all in one. So that's another whole school writing rope where I know it's very small because of the way I had to put it on, but I've got it large on the next few slides. So you've got prep, you've got grade 1, grade 2, and I really like this because I think if you don't have a whole school writing scope and sequence, you could start with this. You could actually go through it and see the common themes, the common threads, and actually decide for your school what are the priorities, which I'll show you again in a moment, an example of what you could do. So this is transcription to grade 6. So the bold doesn't mean anything. It was just to sort of break up the different skills so that you could see it. When I left gaps, it was just getting too long. So it doesn't mean anything. This is an example here where they all link. So maybe that's something you could use for your whole full scope and sequence. I was talking to, I don't know if Sue's on or not, but I was talking to Sue the other night. I called them non-negotiables. And last year I made non-negotiable posters for the classroom, and they were for students as well as teachers. Like, these are the non-negotiables for writing. And they were the very basic. I think Sue called them, hinge points in the curriculum. And it's that critical parts of the curriculum where I would love that as a classroom teacher, that, okay, I'm a grade 2 teacher. These are my non-negotiables. These are the most important parts of writing for grade 2. These are the foundational skills for grade 2. I need to pass these children over to grade 3 with these skills. And if I don't, that's part of my handover for that teacher next year. Is writing craft. Oops. Sorry, I keep covering it myself. I'm not very good at this. Structure. Syntax. Again, I just showed how I might use it to create a whole school scope and sequence for writing, or non-negotiables. Really important things. This is punctuation, and it just shows the punctuation I don't know if you can see my cursor or not, but it just shows going through the curriculum, what's actually in there for punctuation. And critical thinking, and I've highlighted editing skills. So you can see in prep, it starts off with participates in shared editing by circling the capital letters at the beginning of sentences and full stops. And then it goes to rereading their work, and then it ends up with editing to add literacy devices to enhance meaning. So I've just done that. I mean, you may look at it and want to highlight different things. There's lots of little those sort of themes that go through, which would be very useful. So this is an example of what I would do with, I really do think different things work for different brains. This works for me. So thinking about non-negotiables for classrooms and making teachers really aware of what they're responsible for with writing, I think is so important. And it does stop teachers from, even though it might be from enthusiasm, from maybe going outside of the curriculum, going too far up instead of going deep within it, can be another issue as well. So, for example, foundation begins a sentence with a capital letter, ends a sentence with a full stop. They can be your non-negotiables, if that's what you want from your prep students. Again, this is going to be different for every school, but that's in the curriculum. That's the curriculum. I know a lot of schools in foundation are actually doing grade 1 curriculum because that's where their school's at. But for the majority of schools, that's probably not the case. That is from the curriculum. Then as a grade 1 teacher, I don't know how well you can see those highlighted colours, but you can see what they're meant to come in with at prep and then what gets added in grade 1. This is just for punctuation, by the way. It's not the whole writing. I didn't say that, sorry, but this is just punctuation. Grade 2, you can see what they should have come in with from prep in grade 1. And in the blue, you've got the new punctuation that comes in at grade 2. Grade 3, and you can see it's just the green at the bottom comes in at grade 3. And you can see as a teacher what was taught to them at your school in prep, grade 1, grade 2. And it just keeps going on like that. I hope that makes sense. Feel free to interrupt me because it's hard talking to a computer, not knowing, are people getting this? Am I explaining it okay? And all the way to grade 6. This would be, where you're hoping, and if you actually read grade 6 as non-negotiables just for punctuation, for example, they're going to begin a sentence with a capital letter. They're going to end a sentence with a full stop. Sounds simple, but I was a grade 5, 6 teacher. It's not a given at all. Applies the correct use of capital letters for the name of people and places. Applies the correct use of commas in a list. And I won't read the rest, but it is, I think, if your grade 6s have that for punctuation, then that's pretty good. And if you look at the way that's spread out from prep to grade 6, and if every year level really pushes those skills for punctuation, I do not think it's out of the realms of possibility that all your students, leave with that. And I think that should be the goal, that all of them do. And if that doesn't happen, it's not through a lack of trying and a lack of commitment to teach these skills explicitly. And also, like just randomly going to grade 3, for example, I'm teaching my students how to use apostrophes correctly for contractions and single and plural possessions in irregular nouns. So I know I'm teaching that, but I know I am also reviewing applying commas in a list. I'm reviewing the use of capital letters and names of people and places. So I also know what I need to keep reviewing, but I know what I need to introduce. So I hope that makes sense. And you could do that for all the components quite easily, really. With that original document, you could do that without much effort. It won't take me very long. So that's just writing rope again, and just the importance in creating really skilled writers. Is the end. I did talk fast. I knew I'd do it. So I do have an Instagram, a teacher account on Instagram where there is a lot of memes, but there's also a lot of resources. And the memes is not what it's about. There's always something under it that's actually really important to learning and teaching. But I always just start it with a meme because I've always I've always communicated with them, so they're there. But thank you. I don't know how many people end up getting a working link in the end. I see on my phone a lot of messages with people that can't get through.
We've got a few people that managed to get online, so hopefully they did, and it's recorded as well. So, um, thank you. So if anyone's got any questions, feel free to chuck them in the chat or comments. Just that, thank you. What a huge, massive body of work that is obviously seems so relevant and workable for teachers in schools.
I feel like I went really fast.
Yeah.
Talking to a computer, it's sort of just like, all right, have I got that? I don't know.
Oh yeah, and just and writing being such a complex task, like we know, and to go into learning it, teaching it. Sorry, it's yeah,
It's
it's so
actually
complex.
for me, it's the hardest thing to teach and the hardest to assess as well. Like
Yeah,
I find it really difficult and really challenging. You know,
yeah,
even with those documents, it takes a lot.
yeah, yeah, most definitely.
And those
Um,
slides are on Read Ballarat, so people can get those documents if they haven't
Beautiful. And
already.
and you're just so generous with all your resources and time, Kylie. It's yeah, amazing. Thank you. I am going to stop recording for now.
Yep.
And if anyone has a question